Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the seventh session of the 2021 Scissortail Creative Writing Festival. I'm Ken Hayden. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our final session, and I think it'll be a very special session. Hopefully, you've joined and seen some of or all of our previous 6 sessions this year. They've been fascinating and wonderful and inspiring. We appreciate your attendance. The great thing about having them simulcast on YouTube is you get the live experience, but then you can also share them, pass them around, watch them again over and over. They remain. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being such a great supporter of the festival. And a special thank you to all of the authors who from all over the country, from Idaho to South Carolina, Arkansas, Texas, Pennsylvania. Thank you for participating with us this year. I need to thank, and I want to thank the Oklahoma Arts Council for their steadfast support through the years to the Scissortail Festival. Much appreciated. Thank you to the Darrell Fisher Lectureship at East Central University, which sustains much of this festival. Also supports the Fisher High School Creative Writing Contest that East Central University manages. Dr. Mark Walling, Dr. Josh Grasso judge that contest. We have often 600 to 700 entries in that, and that's all part of the Darrell Fisher Lectureship, which also underwrites the festival. Thank you. I'm grateful to my colleagues in the Department of English and Languages who are such a great support, especially Dr. Sarah Peters, our department chair, whom you met earlier with the ECU student writers. Thank you for your steadfastness, Dr. Peters. I want to recognize ECU administration, which is fully on board and appreciates the festival. Dr. Katisha Pearson, our president, Dr. Gibson, our provost, and all the ECU administration. The ECU Foundation has been very integral in helping this festival maintain over the years, and we are very indebted to all of these folks who have helped us, especially this year with our technology and our simulcast and all the things that I know not what to do. I found a colleague, a new friend in the mass comm department, Professor Mike Maxwell, who is making all the magic happen. And I want to say thank you to him and to his student assistant, Garrett Rhines, who has been working overtime for these 3 days. Thank you so much. We're coming to you from the Thrash Television Studio, and this Tiger Media production of the 2021 Scissortail Festival is possible thanks to the support of Bill and Billy Thrash, alums of ECU, and they have given us this wonderful state-of-the-art facility, which we make such great use of, and so it makes this festival possible in this format this year, along with many other interesting projects that are possible through our mass comm department. For information about all the authors, the complete bios, contact on how to get their books and their work, you can go to Scissortail Blogspot, ecuScissortail.blogspot.com. Professor Benton maintains that. That's where all the information is about the festival. That's where the call for readings will be. And we've even set the dates, as always, the first weekend of weekend of April, March 31, April 1, April 2 of 22. We truly hope to be back live and in person. So try to put that in your calendar and hold a good thought for that. We've been inspired by writers, Arkansas poet Kai Coggin, her social justice, her sensitivity, her strength, the expertly crafted fiction of Andrew Geyer, the snarky, honest satire of Tiffany Midge, the personal investment and the historical accuracy and honesty from Kure Shali Lansana, the student authors who I thought were magnificent. And I want to say a great thank you to our creative writing professors, Mark Walling and Dr. Megan Donaldson, who do so much for our creative writing students. We just finished the award-winning wonderful poetry of Barbara Crooker. And now we come to Octavio Quintanilla, our friend from San Antonio, Texas. Quintanilla is also a very fabulous artist, and I'm going to risk something here because I want to show you just a sample of his art. There it is. I'm the proud owner of that. And that is part of his collection, Los Días Oscuros, and he's been painting those through this pandemic. And this one really spoke to me, so I purchased that, and I'm sure he has a lot more. If you look at him on Facebook and on Instagram, you'll notice that he's been painting these very consistently throughout this pandemic, and they are wonderful to see. And you might want to even get one for yourself. Quintanilla is also an exceptional poet, and he is the author of the work If I Go Missing, which I think he's going to read some from tonight. He's the 2018 through 20 Poet Laureate of the city of San Antonio, Texas. His poetry has been published in a number of significant journals, including Rhino, Alaska Quarterly Review, Southwestern American Literature, those types of quality journals. In addition to his public exhibitions of his artwork, Octavio is a major force in the cultural world of San Antonio and of Texas and beyond. He holds a PhD from the University of North Texas, is a regional editor for Texas Books in Review. He's a poetry editor for the Journal of Latina Critical Feminism. He teaches literature and creative writing in the MA and MFA program at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. And it is my pleasure to welcome Octavio Quintanilla. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Ken. First of all, I just want to thank you, Ken, and everybody who's working on this festival, who's made it possible. Thank you for that. And now it's just me and the screen. So me and myself. So it's so good. I hope everybody can hear me. I always freak out about this kind of thing because I always feel like something's going wrong and I don't know anything about it. Anyway, thank you, Ken, for that introduction. And what I want to do today is, let me see the time here because I have about 45 minutes. So I want to keep track of that. 6:07. Okay. So what I want to do today is read poems from my first poetry collection, If I Go Missing, that was published in 2014 by Sloop Press. Some of you might be familiar with Sloop Press. It's still going on, founded by Chuck Taylor in 1973 or something like that. Now Dr. Chris Carmona is the main editor. So I think it's still going strong, and my book is still available, so that's good. Before I read poems, let me just say a few things about who I am and where I come from. As Ken said, I'm a professor at Our Lady of the Lake University, and I've been teaching my whole life, basically. I used to teach high school, 7 years of high school. Then I left that job to work on my PhD, and after that, I kept teaching in different institutions. And now I'm here in San Antonio at Our Lady of the Lake University, where I work with wonderful faculty and brilliant students. So I'm very happy. I am from the Rio Grande Valley. It's about 4 hours south of San Antonio. Some of you might be familiar with it, in Oklahoma. And that's where I went to school, to high school, to elementary school. But I was, even though I was born here in Texas, I lived in Mexico till the age of 9. And once I get to reading some of my new work, I'll talk a bit more about that. But I want to give you that context that I'm from La Frontera, the borderlands of Texas and Mexico. So I think all that aesthetic and that type of narrative and lyric sensibility is in my work. When I was writing this first book, I was reading a lot of poetry in Spanish, a lot of Eastern European poetry. So there's a lot of, and obviously a lot of American poets too, specifically some of the deep image poets. So I think you'll recognize maybe some of the that type of imagery, or some subtle surrealism to my work. So with that said, and I'll keep talking about my work as I go on. So what I want to do is read poems from this first book, then read poems from a new manuscript that I'm working on, that I've been working on for since 2014 or before. And I think it's getting done. Hopefully I have a clean draft by this summer, and maybe start the process of submitting to presses. And then what I want to do, as Ken made a reference to my visual work, my visual poetry, from textos, I want to show you all a PowerPoint of some of my work, and I'll talk about that a bit, and what that is, and where it's been, and where it's going, or where I think it's going. So with that said, let me read some poems here. And just kind of weird that I'm all by myself here, I think, but I'm not. There's a bunch of you out there, good friends, who have joined us and joined me for my reading. So thank you all. I'm going to read some poems from if I go missing, poems that I usually don't read. And the book is divided into 3 parts. And it's a book about place more than anything. It's a book about South Texas, about the landscape, about the way of living, about Nepantla, and that's a term that indicates living in more than one space at once. Spanish, English, US, Mexico. And so I'll start with a bar fight once in a while is a healthy sign. A bar fight once in a while is a healthy sign you still want to live. God's good purpose sits at the bottom of the drink you have every morning to prove you're a man. Once someone told you, it is chingon, it is macho. The trees ignore you because you're not a tree. People ignore you because you're not a tree. Still, you want to talk to them. Let them know you want to start over. You want to find a new opponent more dangerous than the universe. This is the way to go because it is un macho chingon. You need it now, before the mirror forgets what you look like, before water forgets how to drown you. And macho chingon is, it's, macho and chingon in Spanish. I guess you can translate it as a badass motherfucker. This next poem is called Tough Guy. And I think throughout the poems, you're gonna start recognizing the speaker of the poems, the persona I created. Tough guy. My brother points with a red nipple of a cigarette to a guy sporting trendy jeans and flip-flops. Pussy, he says. If you open him up, you'll see he has no guts. When drunk, my brother pours milk between the legs of a beautiful girl and licks. Then He returns to a time when the sound of his name pushed him to the end of the lunch line. Hardly anybody could pronounce it. Teachers tried to rename him. Years later, he wants to go back. He's still crouching under bleachers, trembling at the principal's office. The boy in this bar forgets he no longer has anything to prove. But prison breastfed him scorpions. Now, when he goes out, he carries our mother's prayer like a necklace on his chest, the suffering face of Christ, bloody nest for birds. This is called You Take a Stranger's Life. And it's been a while since I read this poem in public or anywhere. You take a stranger's life. You take a stranger's life and hide it under a shirt. You take it home and make sure the neighbors don't see it. You smuggle it past your mother, who's in the kitchen pouring water into a pot of beans. This life you've taken fits under your mattress. It cries like an orphaned pup, and you hush it with promises to release it. But you won't. You've always thought it was a good idea to have a life to spare, like the spare tire in your trunk, just in case someone came along and took yours. Here's a poem that's a tad longer. It's called The Left Hand, and it's the first poem in the book. And right now I'm reading from part 1, from the first section of the book. And I bet I'll read a couple of poems from the other parts so you can get a sense of how the book changes, the poems. The Left Hand, after Carlos Drummond de Andrade and Mark Strand. 2 poets I was reading at that time. I'm tired of having the same dream every night, I said. A dream in which I lose my left hand, doing a job I wasn't born to do. Sometimes I'm picking trash on the side of the highway. Other times I'm saving a drowning man. Sometimes it's an electric saw that jacks my hand off. Last night, it got chopped clean by a butcher's knife. You know, as a boy, I admired butchers, and I liked their knives. Brown and soft, my left hand bloodies the floor. This hand that has done the slapping and the punching gets punished by a force that's stronger in dreams than God. It's the same hand that broke a beer bottle on a man's head when he called me hijo de puta. The same one dogs lick for affection. As soon as my hand is gone, I remember it as a gentle animal starving for the touch of something other than that of the right hand. Maybe that's what it was. The starving that turned it into an enforcer. Listen, I'm awake now. And I have no way to tell you that even though I live with 2 hands, one always goes missing in my dreams. What does that say about my life? If I ever dream my hand floating down a river, should I follow it? Where would it take me? The salmon and the catfish will know I'm crazy. Look at this fool, they'll say, and laugh the laugh that only they can hear. They've waited centuries for me to dip my feet into the water. They knew I would come and try to take what no longer wants to be part of me. Just so you know, I always have enough time to step out of the river and make my way home. I find you packing your bags, closing the curtains, locking the door. You can't see me, but I see you. And the night returns, and so does the river, and the hand that rides the current to the ocean and refuses to drown. Okay. Hope you're all having fun. It took me a long time to write all the poems, and it took me even longer to put them together into a book. But it finally got done. I want to read a poem. I'm looking at the time. I want to read a poem from one more poem from section 1, and then I'll go to section 2. Here's one. It's called Carcass, South Texas Dirt Road. You still remember how it looked after the drizzle licked it clean. What the hell was it? Blades of grass taking the place of teeth. The wind snout sniffing sockets for a light long gone. You must have been 9 years old enough to know that dust is raised to fall on dust again, old enough to keep secrets. Years turn horror into poetry. Maybe you want to go back to the wood frame house sitting on concrete blocks, to the mud you saved from drowning in a canal, to the girl who had no faith in you. She had a pretty yard. Her father worked for the city. Maybe you don't want to remember her, or that your father was without legal papers, all day digging trenches for plumbers, always walking on the dusty Colonia road that darkened when wet, like a monument for old bones. I'm going to read a couple of poems from part 2. I think you got a sense of the type of poems you'll find in part 1. In part 2, I think, I don't know, I think there might be a little bit more political, but still with the lyric impulse there. So, when I was writing this book, my parents were here in the United States already. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that even that when I came to the United States when I was 9, my parents and siblings stayed behind. It was just me and my little brother to go to school. I was 9 and my brother was 8. So eventually, when I graduated from high school, my parents made the move to America. And my father still has my father died in 2016, 15 actually, December, and I have some poems about that and my new work, and I'll read some of that. But my mom, my parents still have a house. My father, my mother, I guess now, or we now have some farmland that belonged to my father, but I haven't been down there in years, more like 20 years. And when I wanted to go in 2008, 2009, the cartel violence down there was really bad, including the area where I grew up. And so this poem that I'm going to read right now speaks to that longing of wanting to go back home when you can't. That's coffee and vodka. I'm kidding. This poem is called My Parents Can't Recognize the Country of Their Birth. My parents can't recognize the country of their birth. On the streets, children know the names of their enemies. Grandmothers no longer close their eyes at the sound of gunfire breaking a neighbor's window. Towns and villages are empty. In the cities, men and women bury the details of their lives in coffins. Caution is the prayer of the day. In a bad dream, at least we know beforehand who plots against us, who trails our children on their way to school. In a bad dream, we wake to know we're dreaming. But here, few are lucky and many are born with their future fixed around their neck. My parents returned to Mexico in daydream. One day I'll go back and wait for my grandchildren to visit me, my mother says. My father wants to go back and harvest the fields he worked as a boy. I remember those fields. They belonged to my father and to his father before him. In those fields, cows and goats grazed on sunlight under a sky so wild and so blue that it was impossible to imagine any other existence. That poem is from part 2. And this next poem is also from part 2. And it's called Sonnet for Human Smugglers. Take care of them. If they want water, dump them in the river. If they crave freedom, let them loose among rattlesnakes. If they want to breathe, let them breathe dust. Let the desert mouse nest in their white bones. Give them shelter with your greed, with your rape. The roadkill is a sign you're almost home. Point to it and show them who they are. Their lives a documentary, a newscast. But for you, everything is possible. You're the map that leads them astray. Priest leading a funeral procession. Load this cargo. Break them with promises. Backaches that keep them from killing you. So that's from part 2. And now I'll read a few poems from part 3. And poems from part 3, I don't know. I think all the poems here are, they have an emotional autobiography, but in part 3, the poems get a little bit longer, more meditative, discursive, I guess. Part 3 here. The first poem is called I Keep Returning to the Days. I keep returning to the days before I began to lose my hair, to the days before I lost a tooth in a bar fight, to the nights when the love of my life was not much older than my oldest daughter. I'm not lost. I'm here, a bystander at the margins of this great universe, where there's no such thing as miracles. Mary never had an immaculate conception. Jesus never rose from the dead. Those who sleep well at night have never had their wrists slit by worry. The rest of us, potential suicides. Let's face it, it's hard to keep a straight face once our disappointment puts on a gray coat, a black hat, and drives around the city looking for God, wanting to know the truth. Documents get burned every day. Things that evoke memory also get lost. Some are left behind at bus stations or at parks where people set themselves on fire with loneliness. But there must be a star in this great galaxy that knows the true place and time of my birth. I'm driving again, lit by that car's headlights. The road seems to go on forever. This next poem is All There Is. The last time I got wasted was the night I lost my wedding ring. God knows where I left it or who took it. If I could remember, maybe I would realize I flipped it out the window as I drove home from the bed of a one night stand. But I don't remember. I pawned it for gas, I said. And for the first time, I saw a wrinkle on your face. I hated wrinkles my whole life. It was hard to look at loved ones in the eye. I always saw my old leather shoes, my father's belt. I wondered if you wanted to keep going, if you would keep the promise you made one crazy drunken night, to wipe my ass and feed me if ever I broke my back and couldn't move fingers nor feet, not even twist a smile to say thank you. We laughed, and you said, yeah, yes, yes. We've been here long enough. So long I can't imagine not growing old, like hands poking at the dawn, talons scratching a small mirror where our faces remain dust. But I still wonder if you're more than this, more than mirror, more than dust, more than our 12-year-old daughter confessing to a classmate she's in love. Her giggles brought you to tears as we eavesdropped on news not meant for us to hear. She's old enough, I said. And you said, for what? I looked at you and smiled, held your hand like a small human skull, and told you the truth about the night I found you. So that's from If I Go Missing. My first book, and hoping to have a new book soon. Still a new book I haven't. And I never read it, but for some reason right now, as I was reading the poems, I was getting a bit emotional because it's a good thing, that I never, I got sick of it. But I'm finding new things in it as I read right now, so it's a good thing. Maybe that's what poetry ought to do. So I'm going to read. I'm checking the time. I think we're good. I'm going to read some poems from the new manuscript I'm writing. And I think in this book, I write poems that I think I wanted to write in my first book, but I just couldn't write them then. Poems about displacement, about, the trauma that happens when you're a kid, you're 9 years old, and you're separated from your parents. That type of trauma that, that so many kids right now are going through in the border. Kids who get here and get caged. And I really think that's sick and disgusting that we're doing that. I think we're complicit in that. So it really hurts me, and I think it's a theme that it's close to my heart. And I think, I don't know, now that I'm older, now that I've, that art and poetry have helped me confront some of this, some of the pain, some of that stuff that often we don't talk about with our families. I think now I can write poems about that dark period in my life. And of course, it's not just about me. I think, I hope I'm transcending the confessional mode thing. So the new manuscript has poems about that, about displacement, about poems about my father's death. An event that I couldn't write about for a while, until maybe a couple of years ago. Started writing poems about that, and just poems about relationships with others. So let me read some poems for you. See what you think. This poem is called "Parting." Parting. There was a time I had no word for darkness, and so I said darkness. I had no word to say devotion, and so I said two sons grieving one mother. A time came when our parents sat under a tree and cried for us, their sons on their way to a new country. When I tried to return to my boyhood, sometimes I end with my head on my mother's lap. So, I was going to read another poem that goes through that, but I can't. Oh, yeah, here it is. I'm missing page 2, so it's all good. This one's called Loneliness. As a boy, I would climb trees, reach into nests birds would leave unattended. I'll fill my hand with small eggs, and often one or two hatchlings would stare at me from behind the sprigs. There were times I wanted to take them home, keep them as my own, raise them. Imagine their beaks would one day open to call me Father. This next poem is called Letters, and what's interesting is that I'm seeing a lot of connections between the new poems and the poems in the book. In terms of themes, I feel like I'm writing about, obviously, the same subject matter, same themes, but in different ways, different language, different images, just a different take. And so this next poem is called Letters. And I wrote it thinking about being a kid in Mexico and going to visit my grandparents, for example, and hearing them talk about my uncle, or family who lived in the United States, and and hearing my grandmother and my mother and whoever was there talk about, hey, when they were coming back to visit, and about not hearing news, about not being able to contact them, etc. So I don't know, just little images like that can inspire poems for me. A lot of poems coming from my formative years and living in Mexico. Letters. It's okay to dip your bread in milk. Make it soft for your toothless gums as you listen for the mailman to bring you a handful of news from the son you haven't seen in more than a year. See how the afternoon sits on a bench and looks at your sleepless house. Hundreds of miles away, the Rio Grande overflows and doesn't care if you live or die. So make tortillas or give yourself to decay. Throw yourself into the knife, longing that cuts the minutes into tiny eternities. The next time you thirst, drink his whispers. This one's called Love of My Life. How hard can it be to enter my bed as my mother? I'm a newborn. Feed me. I'm the abandoned lamb, the weak hatchling, the branch broken in two to beat a spoiled child. I am all memory. Be a mother and sing to me. Sing to me. Baby, talk into my heart's ear. Run your hand over my head. Tonight, you're not my lover. Tonight, I'm not your husband. Tonight, I'm your missing son. You, the milk at the corner of my mouth. How are we doing on time? I think we're good, right? A few more minutes. I think I'll read one more poem and then show you the slides. Because I don't want to go over 45 minutes, and I think it's getting there. Because Ken told me not to go over, or he'll kick my ass. This is Untitled. I prayed for you last night. I never pray. God knows I hate him, and that's why he loves me. But this is not about God. It's about you, and about how I wanted to tell you straight up the night we met that I only wanted to fuck. Just that, fuck. And now I'm praying like the pussy you said I was when I refused to leave my wife for you. I'm not confessing anything. But what I'm saying is that there are nights when my wife makes me feel so loved. And on those nights, I miss you. And when I miss someone, I pray, even though it makes God laugh. How we doing, Ken? All right, so let me we're doing okay?
Yeah, you're great. You know,
A few more minutes?
I can't kick your ass. I'm a long way from home. You're doing fine, brother. What
All
do you
right,
need?
so I'm going to the PowerPoint from Textos, and I'm going to open it up, and then I'll talk about it.
Yeah, man, you're good. 10 more minutes, whatever, 5 minutes, 5, 8, 10, whatever you need.
All right, perfect. So I'm hoping you all can see that, right? So so it'll take a few minutes to talk about Frontextos, and and if you're in the audience, some of you are familiar with my work. So this is for you all, but also for audience members who might not be familiar with my work, my visual poetry, poesía visual, frontextos, and I did a presentation at some other reading conference, and I started selecting that day. I selected frontextos that all of them had circles or evoked circles, the circular. And in this case, I was going through, I have so many frontextos that I can see, it's easy to identify patterns and motifs and images, recurring images and all that. So for this presentation, I wanted to show you faces that I'm drawing or that I've drawn. And next time I do a presentation, I don't know, I'll focus on animals or something else, But that's what's really cool when you have enough work, visual work, that you can start selecting stuff and almost like curating your own work. So Frontextos is basically a project that I started in 2018, January the 1st. For those of you who don't know, and some of you are probably sick of me talking about it, this is when I started, but I'm still going to say it. So in 2018, I wanted to just commit myself to writing more and all that. So I bought some notebooks and I started doodling on the notebooks and doing blackout, revising myself in the notebooks. And I really loved it. And so I kept doing it. And I challenged myself to do one every day, but also to upload it to my social media, specifically Facebook. Now I'm posting my frontextos on Instagram too, in case you want to check them out. And so I was doing that every day, drawing and writing. And I was writing in Spanish because, Spanish was my first language. But the moment I crossed the Rio Grande, I was suppressed. So it's my way to reteach myself and learn a more formal Spanish. And also, just to, as a way to counter the hate rhetoric that we were hearing at that time, and we probably are now still, of people who spoke Spanish in public spaces and stuff like that, So basically, it was just a big screw you. And also, writing in Spanish is just a different sensibility. It's a different way of thinking, different way of looking at the world. It's a different way of articulating emotion for me. So going back to this concept of Nepantla, that's exactly what I mean. Right now, I'm strictly thinking in English. And I'm trying not to think in Spanish, otherwise I would try and translate myself, and it sounds really stupid. So during and when the COVID hit, and last year, just before spring break, I started a new series of Frontextos called Los Días Oscuros, as Ken alluded to. It can be translated to dark days. And it's not just about darkness, it's also about joy, you'll see. And here, you have this Frontexto, very colorful, and then you have this. Again, the theme today is faces, and those faces look kind of sad. And there's a poem here. It's really hard to read, but it's about the pandemic. De pronto soñábamos pandemia, comíamos pandemia, gritábamos pandemia. And it just goes on with that. Let me try a translation here. Suddenly we dreamt pandemia, or pandemic. We ate it, we sneezed it, we sang it, and it just keeps going. It's just a list of what can be done in times of pandemic, global pandemic, and isolation. And the the size of the frontextos are, for the Diez Oscuros, it's 11 by 14 inches. So they're not that big, but they're big enough for me to have enough space to draw, paint, and write. And as you can see, some of the frontextos, in this case, it's I don't know if you recognize this dude, but it's supposed to be John Steinbeck. And so I have a series within a series of portraits of writers. I painted John Steinbeck, Clarice Lispector, Kafka, and Octavio Paz, and just writers that were great influences when I was, younger, reading and dreaming about becoming a writer and all that. So, and I have some others such as, who else? Steinbeck. I'm sorry, Hemingway, I think, and a few others. So, but I was, having fun with it, and I made them into the Steinbeck the Cholo. All of them looked like cholos, like with tattoos and stuff like that. And this frontexto is just more chaotic. Again, in a lot of instances here, I have no idea what's gonna come out at the end. I often do I'm very intentional about what I'm gonna do. I've been thinking about it for days, and then I start drawing something. And other times, I just go with the flow, go with emotion. And oh yeah, by the way, frontexto, it's a combination of two words, frontera and texto. Frontera, it's borderland, and text. So I wanted to celebrate the place where I come from, and it's a made-up term, which is something that I love to do. Making up words and crap like that. And I have another one that I'm going to introduce you all later for a new series. Well, the new series that I'm doing now from Textos. Here's another one. And for those of you who understand Spanish or read Spanish, I'll read the poem here, and I'll try to translate it as we go. No hay nada que contar. No vimos nada. No cruzamos nada. No conquistamos nada. Aquí, desde la cuarentena, nada ha cambiado. There's nothing to say. We didn't see anything. We didn't cross anything. We didn't conquer anything. Here, from where we are, quarantine, nothing has changed. It's on the fly. I can probably do a better job with more time, but you get the idea. Here's another one. Yeah, some of the faces, I don't mention it when I post it, but some of the faces are faces that I see on the street. Obviously, this woman was not naked, but more than anything, I try and capture something. And I remember seeing this woman look at me with those eyes. It was interesting. So it just stayed with me, and I tried to capture it. Everything else is fiction, And as you can see, I love color, bright colors. Even though now lately in my new work, I'm using a lot of black, dark tones and stuff like that. And I'm painting on canvas now. I'm still doing the work on paper, but now you probably see behind me, there's the frontextos just got bigger. And I don't know, I'm loving that, because I have more space, and it takes me longer, to do one. But at the same time, I'm not pressured to do one every day anymore as I was in the beginning, since now I have a lot of work done, and I have the luxury of time to keep messing with it, tinkering with it, adding things, markings, I'm going to show you my wall so you can see, like, I have a bunch of them in process. I don't know if you can see it. You see that? So it's an intimate look right there for all of you. But my point is, I'm not the type of I guess, writer or artist to just work on one at a time. I work on a bunch of them at a time at different times of the day, different times of the night. Otherwise, I'll get bored with what I'm doing. And after a while, I just don't want to do it. So here's Don Pedrito Paletero. And I kind of, I mean, I don't know where you all see the focus or what you focus on when you see one of my frontextos. I do care about that, and I have a bunch of frontextos where, you know, there is focus, and, you know, the eye gets attracted to a specific thing, you know, as it should be. But often I just like to be all over the place, you know. I kind of like the idea of the reader, the viewer, to look at it for not hours maybe, but more than 1 minute, and discover little things, you know, images, little birds, I don't know, text, words, letters. And also, I don't know about you all, but I love to see other people's handwriting. There's a pleasure for me to see, to write by hand, and also to read other people's handwriting and see it. I always think that I'm going to discover things about them, you know, that they themselves don't know. But it's bullshit, you know. I don't. Here's another one. And as you can see, also another element of my work is that I really like the idea of creating work that obviously it's done, it's finished, but also that gives you a sense that it's not done, that it's still in process. And maybe I guess it's still in process. It's not done until you all see it and love it or hate it or whatever. Here's another one. And I try to choose faces and styles that are different. I'm always messing with style, experimenting, you know. And all this comes from my readings, from the books I read, from my studies in art. And I used to paint a long time ago, but I stopped, and now I'm glad I picked it up again. And by a long time ago, I mean like when I was my 20s, 21, 20, 19, right after high school, when you have big dreams of being a famous artist. Here's another one. Here's another one. It's, you know, just combination of color and text. And you also probably notice that some of them have little text, and others, the poem is more, it's longer, more expansive. And here's one. If you're from the Valley, I'm sure you recognize this guy, Freddie Fender, The Water Tower. Freddie Fender, you know, Wasted Days and Wasted Nights. I saw him once in the street. There was a Freddie Fender festival. I don't know if they still hold it in San Benito, Texas. I used to live there. And I saw him. I didn't talk to him. I regret that. And this last one is, I was painting a portrait of my father when he was a young man. And then, you know, I painted over it after. So everybody, I think that's it for me. I think we did it, 45 minutes.
Hi, Octavio.
Thank you.
Just a splendid presentation. You know how much I admire your work. We could talk for hours about what you've shown us. Your poetry, I think you create this persona of someone that's searching, looking for the parameters of life and trying to define existence by bumping up against those parameters. And as you suggested, some of them are dreamlike. But they're also so concrete and real with the whole issue of the border, the La Familia, your father, all of that. It's just really, really beautiful, and I admire it so much. Your painting is just otherworldly, and I'm glad I own one, and I'm sure you'll sell some tonight by people looking at it. But
Thank you, brother.
thank you, my brother. I really I'm so glad we finally got to host you, and I hope you come back to see us up here in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
In the flesh. You're always welcome.
I would love to, and thank you, Ken, for inviting me. We met, I don't know, a few years back in Corpus, right? Maybe
Yeah.
what, 3-4 years ago or
Right.
more.
4 years ago, I believe. Yeah.
And I still have that. I remember taking a photo with you and maybe Tom Murphy or one of those, the poets down there, and I still have it, and I'll send it to you so you can
Right
have
on.
it.
Very good.
Yeah, that's what we meant. Thank you, man. Really appreciate
Right.
it.
Well, we need to wrap this up. It's been wonderful. Octavio Quintanilla, fabulous. If we were in person, we'd be having a standing ovation now. Thank you, audience members, for joining and for participating. Share these with all your friends and folks who would enjoy these presentations. I am again humbled by the abilities of these authors and the artistic integrity they bring to the festival every year. And I am especially grateful to the audience who's tuned in. And I ask you to pass these along as you enjoy them in the replay. They'll be up on YouTube for quite a while, I'm sure.
Excellent.
Until next year, till March 31st. Peace, everybody. Good night.
Awesome, everyone. Thank you all. Appreciate it.